Biosecurity, when I said under, I mean under the mandate that you work under. So you have that control, which is
both our act it covers also domestic. So start from internal all the way to internal.
That's really good to know. We look to you for examples as we talk about mandates and stuff like this over the next few days. Does anyone else have a different sort of structure to this for their coordination of invasive species activities?
Just add on to Monica, I think the inter-island one, I'll give some example on how best the collaboration between, as highlighted by Dave, we eradicate rats today and tomorrow another ship comes in. Unfortunately, they didn't put the lines with these rat rails, so the rats come out from the boat onto the rope that ties it to the wharf, and again you get an infestation. So what I'm saying is that there needs to be well coordinated, but collaborate with biosecurity. So biosecurity can always advocate to the shipping agents. Okay, if you are visiting these islands, please ensure that the ropes that you throw to the land have these rat rails that prevent any rats from on board to go ashore. Likewise from ashore to the boat. Those are just some of the small details in regards to some of the invasive species. Otherwise, you eradicate rats from a certain island or a certain place, and there's likely to be infestation if that part of communication is not done well. For enforcement, I can share a bit on biosecurity Fiji. There's legislation in place, and also this enactment of collaborators where biosecurity actually gives them the mandate to carry out the work on their behalf. So they are covered by the legislation, by the law. So when they go to the possibility to enter any premises except a dwelling house, to carry out that work. So that's very important to have the backing of the law or attire yourself when you go out into the field to carry out your work. Otherwise, the landowner can actually stop you, and we have cases sometimes they chase you with a K knife out of his compound, because you say, hey, you're not. But when you tell him the law, the only place that I'm not allowed to enter is a dwelling house. Apart from that, if I believe the biosecurity risk is here, we are likely to enforce. Yeah? So one of the latest incidents in regards to internal outbreak in Fiji is varromites. Varromites in honeybees. Varromite is actually a parasite in honeybees. So the enforcement team actually checks every hive within Fiji to ensure that it's free from varromite. If not, they burn it, compensate the owners for that. Yeah? Those are just some of the collaboration internally. And when termite enforcement came into play within Lautoka area, we didn't have the manpower to do that. So we seek the collaboration from discipline forces. So that includes the Army, Navy, even the prison officers. So that is how legislation can actually help you in a time of a biosecurity situation. Okay? So in the case of a unique situation in Vanuatu, when they actually declared a state of emergency for the incursion of CRB, Coconut Rhinoceros Bill, so everybody actually played a big role in the delimiting survey, the containment, and ensuring the suppressing the population and trying to eradicate it. So if you have a good biosecurity bill or law that not only touches only on the international but also internally, it will really help you a lot. Because as I've stated earlier yesterday, some places you can only have 1 or 2 biosecurity officers that actually look after the entire island or out islands as well. But you can have as much as 300 plus officers to look after. But the risk is still the same. Yeah? It's still the same. You're dealing with the risk, and mostly it's an unforeseen risk, something that you cannot see with your naked eye when you're dealing with bacteria, viruses, nematodes.
International, we've got very strong agreements. Most countries don't have biosecurity bills. You can manage the risk closer to the source of the risk if you have those agreements in place. If you have a biosecurity bills and identify what the sources are and what you're trying to protect, you can put in place biosecurity before things get to those areas you're trying to protect. Does anyone have at the moment, apart from Fiji and Marshall Islands, any control of borders internally that you know of? Movement controls into and out of protected areas?
Use the mobile force. They use the mobile phones in laboratories.
Yeah, so movement control for a high-risk species.
Well, for us, it starts from the port of entry.
So for you, it's like an end-to-end.
Yeah, but
Basically.
still we do monitoring. Like for example, for the ladder beetle, there are ways you don't only use tracks. There are ways that you can identify if there's a ladder beetle or not. But there are other techniques that they use the net, the UV light, things like that.
And that's a good point as well. So for surveillance, right, you can use, for coconut rhinoceros beetle, for example, you can use pheromone traps, but they don't always work. And this is common for a lot of species, and it's not because they're not effective, it's because the species might be in low abundance, so they're hard to detect. So when ants are in low abundance, hard to detect them, and we'll talk some more about that too. Surveillance techniques.
So whenever a ship is coming out of another country that is like Solomon, PG, we tell them to load, especially Guam and Hawaii, load the cargo ship with whatever they bring in during daytime, not nighttime. Which attracts the right view.
Another difference between international and domestic borders is the difference in transport frequency and the number of entry points. So when you were doing the exercise, I think for most of you, a couple of international entry points, some which might be temporary, like the sufferance ports, but lots and lots of domestic points of entry. So, and lots of islands. So often those international points, because you have to go through customs immigration, they're controlled. There's flight schedules, boat schedules, it's predictable. Whereas for domestic transport, it's often uncontrolled and unpredictable. You don't even know if yachts are arriving. So there's obviously higher risk for domestic biosecurity when there is international biosecurity. So all of those things like controlling the pathway, controlling spread, are all going to be more difficult for domestic biosecurity. So climate change, there are differences in international and domestic issues. Ranges might change, so they might move to higher altitudes if you have high islands. And because there is so much international trade, there's a higher risk of species getting around the place and being moved to new habitats that are newly suitable. From a domestic point of view, although there's not necessarily as much increase in transportation, there is an increased risk of outbreaks with climate variation. So if we have more frequent cyclones, then you're going to get more potential outbreaks of invasive species, which often rely on disturbance, and it frees up new resources for them. Potentially there might be some extinctions of invasives due to climate change, but I don't think there's any evidence of that, so we really don't know enough about what's going to happen. Tools and resources, when you arrive in an international airport, you have X-ray machines, you might have fumigation facilities to fumigate at-risk goods, but you don't really have that domestically. And in more remote islands, you won't have anything but people in your eyes and their ability to look for things. So really important there. But they have to keep looking, and we talked about how much you have to look. For instance, in Samoa, you might be doing surveillance. You might have a protected area, but no one's actually looking. No one's actually doing surveillance to make sure things are not moving in through the borders there. So people need to take a lot of time to detect things. There's differences in social buy-in. Do you know what I mean by social buy-in? It's engagement of people in whatever the problem is and getting them to work for you. And the types of people you have coming internationally, obviously there's tourism in the Pacific, but also people on boats and fishing vessels who really don't care that much about what happens in your country, potentially, whereas local residents do. You're reliant on your environment. So you're probably likely to get more people, more easily get people engaged within your communities than you are international visitors, which is, I guess, a difference for them. Does anyone have any other thoughts on these things? Are there any other differences you see between international and domestic biosecurity? It's good if we can use the principles of international biosecurity, but there are some differences we need to think about.
some countries do regular patrols around the islands. I know Australia is currently buying lots of boats for countries to patrol their waters. So thinking about all those opportunities to work with other agencies that have already got the boats cruising around, you know, maybe you could jump on with them at some stage and or once a month, and or at least make them aware of what to look out for. Just looking at current opportunities, because it costs a lot of money to have a boat just for this. A lot of countries would struggle to do that, so it's about trying to find the resources that are already doing what you're doing, and maybe they just need another task or make them aware of it.
Or if there are boats available, you could have observers on those boats, at least from time to time. And again, it's the relationships. That's something to have a look at for your workbook, and maybe make note some of those things to find out if your country is going to get some of these boats that Australia is going to provide for surveillance, and who you should talk to about engaging that sort of thing.